Hello, welcome to Into the Fire, a Burning Coal Theater Company podcast series.
Hi, this is Jerome Davis. I'm the artistic director of Burning Coal Theater Company, and I'd like to welcome everyone to Into the Fire, the Burning Coal Theater podcast series on all things theatrical. We have a very special guest today, Natalie Blackman, who is the voice, text, and accent coach for many productions in this area and elsewhere. She teaches voice and text at the Illinois Shakespeare Festival, for instance, and is on the faculty doing the same kind of work at the University of North Carolina at Greensboro. Natalie is working with us on our production of My Fair Lady right now. And has been with us both as an actor, which she is, and quite a good one, and also as a vocal text and accent coach for several of our past productions, both musicals and non-musicals. So Natalie Blackman, welcome. Thank you for joining me.
I'm glad to be here.
Well, we are glad to have you. I wanted to start out by asking fundamental question number one, which is how in the world do you get interested in something such as this? It seems a little far afield from the usual. I did a play in sixth grade and I loved it. How'd you get involved in this?
Sure. Well, thank you for asking that because I think a lot of my students don't always know that you can make a career out of this. And there are many careers doing voice, text, and accent work. They're all three different things. And
Right.
you can do it on set, you can do it for video games now, you can do it for live theater, which is my preference. But I guess the short answer is I had a teacher and I
Mm.
was 18. Her name was Elizabeth Loughran at Circle and Square Theater School, which is in the basement under the theater where Wicked has been playing for I don't know how many years, 20 something maybe.
Right.
But she said, "You're going to do this for a living. Come shadow me while I walk around your class and listen to people." So
Mm.
I guess she was right.
Why did she pick you?
I mean, I think I was diligent, I was interested, um, and she was a champion of young people,
Mm.
and I think she did a really lovely job, just honing in on the strengths of her students. And I'm really grateful that she pointed that out because I don't know that I would have thought to go into this.
Right.
But I was lucky to have a lot of wonderful teachers. After Circle in the Square, I went to the University of Utah, where I had two teachers who had a postgraduate degree from the Central School of Speech and Drama, which for a long time was the only place you could get a degree in theater, voice, speech, accent training.
Really? I didn't know that. That's interesting. Yeah. And did you go there? Have you done Central
I did
School?
not, though Rebecca Bosson went there, who's
Mhm.
another wonderful accent coach in town. Um, so I got a graduate degree from Illinois State University in classical acting and civic engagement, but then I
Mhm.
went on to get a couple additional certifications. I'm a Fitzmaurice voice work teacher and a Knight Thompson speech work teacher, which is my latest certification, which is helps to learn every sound in human language so you can make them and play with all of them and help actors to do the same.
I imagine that the film industry has a lot of need for that skill set as well. We always seem to want to cast American actors as British and British actors as American and whatever else. But I would think that that's and in the film industry you can really fine tune that. I would think because you can reshoot a scene over and over, and the dialect coach could be there, on the set saying, "This time let's hit this sound," or whatever the case may be. So I would think there'd be a significant living to be made in the film industry, television and film.
Yeah,
Uh,
there really is, and especially because I mean it's a range, of course. It depends on how much of a budget? Of course, if you're working on a low budget or
Right,
a Marvel movie, it's different,
right,
obviously. But
right,
if you're a super high-end voice and text coach, I mean, there are actors who the studios will have you work with them for months, if not something in the range of a year. So an actor can live their life if they wanted in this whole new accent.
right.
Um, but I think we're leveling up our accent work in this country, I think,
Mhm.
because for a long time we thought we really didn't need um other accents, but we're realizing we all have accents.
Mm.
When I was in school, uh, people talked about, quote, not having an accent.
Right,
But if you're from Australia, if you're from any other place besides where I'm from, you're going to hear my accent.
right,
And so I think we've come to more of an appreciation for the nuance and the individuality and the character choices um, in this country, maybe by, I hope, being less and less American centric. So we're getting a little more interested in accents from other places and how nuanced and how much skill it takes to do them well. So
right.
I think Americans are leveling up
Good.
our accent work game, I
In
think.
in the area of accents, I agree with you. In certain other areas, we may be not quite so much. But let me ask you that question then, because that to me is a very interesting question. You know, why is it important if you're doing a play that's set? Let's say the play is My Fair Lady, and it's set in London in 1914. Why is it important that the actors have a British accent if they're performing for an American audience, or is it important?
Absolutely. I mean, I would say it's all contextual. I mean, Shaw wrote a play about accents, about hierarchy as it is manifest in every word and sound we utter. Um, and the more I get into accent work, the more it is at its core all about belonging. So it's also all about othering. And so it really is a question of the context of the play because accents are just sounds. So there isn't a wrong accent, just objectively wrong, but there absolutely is a wrong accent for a certain context.
Mhm.
So for example, it would, I think, not serve the story if we didn't have, the specifics of the accents in My Fair Lady that George Bernard Shaw was very familiar with.
Right.
But I just got off half an hour ago with the director of Our Town for Illinois Shakes, Laurie Adams.
Yeah.
And at this time, I think I've done a New Hampshire accent in Our Town. It tells one story, but I think we're more interested in the story of all of those characters having the accent that is the actor's accent and being the small town in America that has the diversity of experience and language influences and media influences and family influences and even the way we belong in certain friend groups or how we want to identify. There's so much nuance in the way we speak. So in that production of Our Town, I think we're inviting specifically the actors to use their accents that they live in every day because it adds something to the story of what is small town America. And I'm sure everyone who's listening to this will have been in plenty of circumstances where there's a right and a wrong way to sound.
Right.
Um, sure, in certain interview contexts, in academic contexts, we have a way that we have historically valued sounding. And that may be a totally different sound than what you would really want to use if you're with your friends or if you're with your family. When I came home from Circle in the Square, I had kind of a transatlantic accent because that was what they were teaching
Right.
still in 2004. And my family was like, "You're weird." And my friends were like, "You sound pretentious." And that was not the right accent for that context.
Mm.
But yeah, I mean, I would say I love how it's more of a discussion than it used to be.
Why do
What
we,
is the story that these accents are telling?
right? Why do we ascribe pretension to certain kinds of accents and not to others? There certainly is pretentiousness across the board, but we do that, and we also it's I'm very interested in the so-called special relationship with England and the degree to which, if you watch products being sold on television or on the radio or whatever, anytime they're trying to convince us that the product is important, often you'll hear a British accent, and it's probably not even a British actor; it's probably an American actor doing a British accent. But why do we both mock them and their pretension and elevate them for their importance and seriousness? Whereas if we decide there does I don't think there would ever be an example where a marketing person said, let's um, let's get an Austrian actor to pitch our product for us, or let's get a Belgian. Why do we think of the British as being more important and also sillier than most others?
Well, it's a great question for a sociolinguist, which I'm not, but I
Mhm.
also enjoy uh, diving into those waters and
Yeah,
making some observations from my perspective, which may include uh, there's this sociolinguistic concept that I really enjoy learning more about, covert and overt prestige.
mm,
And so the overt prestige is kind of what we're talking about, the pretension. We kind of already know that someone who speaks with a received pronunciation accent, the accent the Queen would speak with, has a certain amount of status and there's a certain amount of power within a circle for someone who sounds like that. But another example of potentially more covert prestige would be a North Carolina politician
mm,
who dials up their quote country accent
yeah,
in their political ad.
yeah. Bill
Uh,
Clinton used to do that, I think, and I think Obama actually has done it at times.
yes,
Well, yeah,
yes.
yeah,
So it's to me it goes back to that like belonging, othering, and feeling is the are these is this collection of sounds is this person's accent
yeah,
inviting me in or pushing me away?
yeah.
And it's very personal. Some sounds have real harmful history, um, but specifically RP and British accents. Um, I mean, I love talking about when the Daniel Jones codified that received pronunciation
Mm,
accent that GB Shaw is referring to, but William Tilley was his teacher, and William Tilley was an Australian guy living
yeah,
in Germany, teaching them what he thought was the prettiest English.
mm, right,
So it's kind of totally made up. There's nothing inherently better about it,
right.
but it started getting adopted by private schools, and so then it was only accessible to people with a lot of money and potentially social power.
Let's
So
talk about power in the context of the play that we're both working on right now. My Fair Lady is Lerner and Lowe, who wrote
yeah.
Camelot and Brigadoon,
Mhm.
some other glorious pieces of music, but it's based on George Bernard Shaw's play Pygmalion. And anyone who knows anything about Shaw knows that he was primarily interested in class issues. He was the first, not the first, but he was a first person to advocate for a universal income, for instance, about 100 years before Andrew Yang came along, which is interesting. But he did not. I don't think he just randomly selected the method of earning a living that Henry Higgins practices. I think it's deliberately chosen, um, and yet it's not. He does provide value added to Eliza in some way. I think there is at least the suggestion in the play that she will do better in life now that he's got a hold of her, figuratively speaking. And so, is Shaw condemning the idea of class as it relates to the language and the accents of characters, or is he merely studying it? What's he on about? What's he trying to say in Pygmalion and therefore in My Fair Lady? Do you think?
Well, I would not try to speak for George Bernard Shaw, but um, the word that comes to mind is I would say he's certainly interrogating the gut response we have to hearing an accent that has been historically marginalized and interrogating our associations with speech and intelligence. Um, I do an exercise in my class where we listen to a bunch of people and try to guess their professions.
Hmm.
And it's very enlightening and it's a British accent exercise. So we listen to a wide variety of British accents,
Mhm.
and rarely do people get it right in either direction. But there is absolutely a bias
Can you give
that
me an
I
example of
think
yeah,
we had a little glitch. So
yeah.
we'll go back to somewhere.
Okay. Well, can you give me an example of that? Like what is a good example of a guess that the students make that is incorrect on a regular basis?
Sh Sure. Um, the So a couple of people that whose accents we have in that exercise. We've got Diane Abbott, who is the first Black woman MP. Um, and they would not guess she's a politician. They they guess she's talking about going on a date. Um, and so they make all kinds of guesses about, but I've never had anyone guess that she's a politician.
Mm, okay.
And I also have a serial killer on there who
Oh
they also
God.
think must be a lawyer or a doctor or someone who has a rather posh accent.
Well, I guess he did have some job at some
He does
point.
have some job, but
Yeah.
he's they always think he's like a retired grandpa or something like that.
Right. Yeah.
But um, I think at the very least, I would say he's really forcing us to consider assumptions we make about people based on how they speak. And
Does that
mm,
apply in other areas too? The accents are your focus, but does it apply in other ways too?
oh,
Uh,
like,
Gender, for instance, race, geographic location.
those are all big influences, certainly,
Yeah.
that that come into accent work as major influences.
Mhm.
Um, part of what I really like about my job is it's about helping people find what feels like their voice, and represents them well to do the job they want to do. For example, Kirsten Gillibrand definitely got some voice coaching before she ran for president.
Mhm.
And even though I don't know if she feels like that's her new voice, uh, if she spoke in the higher pitch range that she had been accustomed to, I don't know. Maybe we would have assumed she wasn't up to the job. Who knows?
Whereas Bernie Sanders probably did not get any vocal coaching.
No, but he's that hometown New York kind of guy. So he,
Yeah.
working class feel that feels belonging-y, that feels like it resonates. It
But
feels familiar.
this is what I mean about this idea being applicable in other ways. That particular election had three primary candidates, all of whom lived within a couple of miles of each other, right? Trump and Clinton and Bernie Sanders. So Sanders lives in Vermont now, but he was
Yeah.
born in Brooklyn, I guess, or Queens, Brooklyn, I think. Trump was Queens, and Hillary
Yes.
lived and worked in Manhattan, had an office in Manhattan. And so that has to be, on some level, that can't be a fluke. It happens too often. Are we ascribing geographic location to intelligence, um, to a success, or that sort of thing?
Oh, I think it's a great question. Certainly, I think it's coming to play in our politics.
Yeah,
It's what we assume about people based on where they're from, not just how they speak, but
right.
certainly not my expertise. But yeah, it is a fascinating note that,
Yeah,
they are, but they
yeah.
speak so differently too, based on their communities that they want to speak to.
Appeal to, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
right, right. I'm just curious. This is way outside of the most interesting aspects of what you do. But as an actor, uh, when you're doing a play and you're deeply invested in the character and in it, as they say, and you hear another actor not using the accent correctly, does that jar you? Does that cause you to lose focus or that sort of thing?
I mean, I wouldn't say I don't notice, but
Yeah,
um, it's nice to have two totally separate jobs. I would not accent coach and act in the same show. The
sure.
answer would be no. But I would say I mean when I think my focus is more on the action than the
Yeah,
sound of the action if I'm
right,
acting.
right. That makes a lot of sense. Um, when you do your job, let's say at the Illinois Shakespeare Festival, are you able to do it remotely, or is it better to be in the room with the people? And then secondarily, does knowing the actor influence how you approach your job with them?
Yeah, great questions. I'm gonna be in Illinois all summer, so that's the
Right.
first answer. But uh, mm, voice, text, accent coaches are increasingly working almost entirely remotely,
Mhm.
and it is freeing to be able to do some of that process online, and some of that process is really effective online because I can show you really specific parts of my articulators without being in your space physically. I
Yeah,
can show you what I'm doing with my tongue and my lips and all that stuff without invading your personal space. We can make recordings. There's lots of useful things, but ultimately, I
right.
think without being in the acoustic environment the show is happening in, it's extraordinarily difficult to do the complete process, I would say, online entirely, which sometimes even live theater coaches are being asked to do, which is extraordinarily difficult. And I don't think I could do
Mhm.
certainly the best job that I can do entirely remotely. Um,
Right.
but in terms of knowing actors, I mean, sure, I think a big part of a voice text accent coach's job is learning how the actor learns.
Mhm.
Um, and that's what part of the joy is because we all learn so differently. Um, so if I know how an actor learns, we can go pretty fast.
Right.
But there's a joy in figuring out, is this a kinesthetic learner, a visual learner? Do we want to learn by doing, or do you want a bunch of charts, or do you want a picture of the mouth, or do you want a bunch of videos, or there's a lot of ways in.
I would think so. In the play, in My Fair Lady, Henry Higgins says, I can, somebody who lives in London, I can tell you within 2 miles where they're from, and sometimes within 2 streets. And I'm listening to that and I'm thinking, surely he doesn't mean that everyone who lives on those 2 streets sounds exactly alike. There must be other personal characteristics that go into that. And so I guess this is kind of an off the cuff question. I've not really thought through it very much, but are there times when exploring the full character's history, background is useful in figuring out what the accent would sound like? Or do we just say, oh no, it's Irish, it's city Irish, let's make sure it's city Irish, or it's country Irish, make sure it's country Irish? I know that a lot of times time is the limiting factor in these things, but in a best case scenario, what all would you be looking at besides just the physical location of the person's um, life?
Exactly. Yes, I completely agree with everything you've said, which is it's generally time limited, but
Yeah.
ideally, it's required to know this person's history.
Mm.
Um, we just, in my accents class, did something I call an idiolect heritage project about ourselves. So my accent is my idiolect, and it's as unique as a fingerprint.
Yeah.
So everyone has an accent that is incredibly specific and nuanced. And every time I do that project with my students, there are new influences that I had never even thought of. But major ones include languages. Um, there are many countries, like a lot of folks in Africa are polyglots, speaks three, four, five languages,
Because
you
they're
know?
nomadic, or because there are many people
Well,
moving into their area? Or
sure, because there's your colonial language, but
yeah.
then there's all the local languages because before a colonial power took over, and I am not a African colonial expert by any means,
Right. Right.
but there are just thousands of languages in
Mhm.
Africa, and I think the last one I really worked on was in Ghana, and there are about 75 official languages.
Wow.
Um, English is official, but they are recognized by the government because there's such a deep human history of groups identifying themselves as belonging through sound,
Mm.
like the shibboleth story from the Bible. So languages is a major part of what goes into a person's accent, how many languages they speak, and because every language has its own sound making system and
Yeah.
how we get meaning out of that set of sounds. So I just have my phonology, my sound system is pretty limited because I only speak English. But
Wow.
if I spoke several other languages, especially if they're really different languages, my sound system is going to be huge, much bigger. So languages, the where, as you said, and the when.
Mm. Yeah.
Media has massively changed and somewhat
Yeah.
homogenized the way we speak, as I think
Very.
everyone already knows.
Yeah.
Well, when? So those are some basics, but
When does the play take place, or the movie take
yeah,
place? Yeah.
but there's
Yeah.
so much that goes into how we speak. The media we consume, the education we have had, the anatomy of our mouth, and how doctors may have changed it. I mean, there's just so, if you play the trumpet, for example, you have to use your mouth in a particular way, and you're going to have tension and a certain amount of structure that I don't have because I've never played the trumpet.
Yeah.
So even that would be a big part of how someone sounds. So ideally, you want all of that.
I remember I did a movie back in the 90s in Paris as an actor, and there was a woman on the crew who was a makeup artist, and she was very nice and very gentle, very sweet when she was talking in English. But then she would switch over to French, which was her native language, and it was like another person had walked in the room. Suddenly she was shouting, yelling. It seemed to be much angrier. And then she would switch back to English, and it was like a light switch flipped. It was the strangest thing. And I had seen that once before working with a couple of Russian scene designers on a play in New York. One of them was lights and one of them was set, but they were both Russian, and they would, mild-mannered, polite, unassuming, and then they'd start talking to each other in Russian, and you thought they were about to kill each other. They would just go at it. And I thought, well, is the personality connected to the accent in some way? I don't know.
I mean, I think people can have different idiolects in different languages.
Yeah,
And I
yeah,
use the French example in class a lot
yeah.
because French phonology
Uh-huh.
is just a lot more rounding. The vowels are round. So
Yeah,
if I am smiling, I cannot do this accent. But if I have my American smile on,
yeah.
if I try to do this accent, it doesn't really
Not
sound
so
right. It
much.
doesn't
Yeah,
sound right.
yeah,
And so I think I have a hypothesis that when Americans go to France and people are not pulling their lip corners up and out in a smile,
yeah.
because you can't do that if you speak French.
Right, right.
You need
Oui,
relaxation
oui.
and sometimes even rounding to make the sounds correctly.
Bonjour.
So we walk around
Yeah.
thinking the French people are not as nice, whereas they're just have a different base oral posture that makes their
Wow.
language more convenient.
Wow.
But we make meaning out of something that doesn't have meaning in France.
Yeah. Yeah. That's fascinating. That is truly fascinating and not something I'd really thought about in that way. But absolutely interesting, Natalie Blackman. I guess we'll wrap it up there. You will be working with us. You're coming into the rehearsal tonight for My Fair Lady, which opens Thursday, April 9th at Burning Coal and runs through the 26th. The first weekend's already sold out, and the second week's all but. So if you're going to get tickets, you better get them now, folks. Burningcoal.org is the website. And we would love to see everybody there. And Natalie, I will see you tonight at the theater for rehearsal.
I'm excited to be there, and I just have to say, I think you're doing something really special and unique with My Fair Lady that I have never seen
Oh,
at any
lovely.
other theater.
That's
With her
great.
8-person My Fair Lady. So I don't know that it will ever be done this way ever again. So don't miss it.
We'll give it a shot and see how it lands. And safe travels on your way in.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Take care.
Take care. Bye.